Chapter 2 China Airlines Flight 008. As I was constantly searching for news about politics in 2015, I missed much of what was going on besides that subject. One thing that made the news in October of 2015 was the story of a woman who gave birth during a flight from Taiwan to Los Angeles, forcing the pilot to make an emergency landing in Alaska. Well, let's talk about the story first and then we will focus on the flight path. The woman, a Taiwanese national, apparently lied about being 36 weeks into her pregnancy. She declared at the check-in counter that she was 30 weeks into her pregnancy. Although there is no official prohibition from traveling at that stage of a pregnancy, there is a rule among the airlines that pregnant women should not travel if the woman is over 32 weeks pregnant. She did not present any documents from a doctor, declared she was under 32 weeks pregnant and she was allowed to fly. She boarded the plane alone towards Los Angeles LAX. No one knows for sure if that was her case, but there has been a Chinese black market that takes Chinese pregnant women to give birth in the United States, making the baby to be born having automatic US citizenship. It's called birth tourism. There are reports that some women pay as much as $35,000 to go to the United States to have their babies in US soil. There are several reports, articles, and news videos online of authorities raiding clinics and taking doctors and nurses into custody for being part in such a scheme. No one knows if this woman was one of those women who paid such an amount of money to have her baby born in US soil. Some passengers who were on the same flight and saw and even filmed the whole thing said that at some point the woman asked, "Are we in US airspace yet?" Upon landing in Anchorage, Alaska, Border Patrol agents entered the plane and checked the woman's passport. She was found guilty of lying about how far into her pregnancy she was when boarding the plane, and 2 days later she was deported back to Taiwan. The baby in fact received US citizenship and remained in the US since a judge decided that the plane was flying towards the US and thus the baby was meant to be born in the US. Reports said that the baby was later reunited with the mother in Taiwan. This is not the first time such a decision on citizenship of babies born during an international travel had been made favorable to the families. There are reports that even back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, babies born during long voyages through the high seas coming from Europe towards America were given automatic citizenship upon arrival on Ellis Island by immigration inspectors. Those babies were granted citizenship because of the intent of being born in America. Many people on board of China Airlines Flight 008 took pictures and made cell phone videos of the airborne birth and filled the internet with their footage. Below are some pictures of the flight attendants who helped the woman and a doctor who luckily was flying from Taiwan to LAX. After I had enough information about the origin of the flight and the people involved in it, and the reason why the pilot had to make an emergency landing in Anchorage, Alaska, I then took a look at the flight path and compared flights on a globe model versus a flat earth model and got my own conclusion. Although this emergency landing took place at around the same time the flat earth videos were popping out of my YouTube suggestion feed, I did not immediately connect the dots. Only after I did my own comparison and research that those things started making sense to me. Image 02 on the next page demonstrates the results of my research. As we see on the image provided by Google Maps on the prior page, the blue line shows the two cities, Taipei in Taiwan and Los Angeles, the US. The flight on the globe should have been somewhere above the Pacific Ocean, and then according to several news outlets, it was diverted north toward Anchorage, which would have taken the pilot as long to reach Anchorage. as it would have taken him to reach LAX if he just kept the plane flying. Or the pilot could have just landed the plane in Hawaii, since common logic is that Hawaii is located between US mainland and Asia. Image 03 below demonstrates what was reported on the news as this event happened. A single internet search into China Airlines Flight 8 emergency landing will result in images like this one on the right, of an airplane flying over the Pacific Ocean, diverted to Alaska. The flight time between these two cities, according to an internet search, is between 12 to 13 hours. China Airlines stated that the flight took off from Taiwan at 11:50 p.m. on Wednesday Taipei time and was scheduled to arrive in the US at 12:35 p.m. Taipei time, which is 8:35 p.m. Wednesday Los Angeles time. That would have been a 12 hours and 45 minutes long flight. The emergency landing in Anchorage took place at 9:06 a.m. Taipei time. That's 3 hours and 29 minutes ahead of the scheduled arrival time in LAX and 9 hours and 16 minutes into the flight. That didn't make sense on a globe. It only showed evidence that the plane was already flying over Alaska when the pilot landed the plane. There was no diversion. The flight was not over the Pacific and nowhere near Hawaii. It was now all clear to me that China Airlines 008 could not have landed in Hawaii because Hawaii is not really in between Asia and the Americas as it is shown on the globe, and also demonstrated on television screens during flights and on the seat back screen in front of the passenger as the image on the next page taken during a flight from San Francisco to Tokyo shows. I realized then that we have been fooled into believing what they're constantly bombarding us with, images of a globe, and we see it in every flight we take. However, the reality is way different. As demonstrated above on the larger image and then on the smaller image, comparing the same flight path between San Francisco and Tokyo, on both the globe projection and on the flat Earth map, the aircraft flies nowhere near Hawaii. The image shown on the seat's back screen is only to persuade passengers to believe they are flying over the Pacific near Honolulu, Hawaii, when in fact the aircraft is flying over Alaska, closer to the polar jet stream, nowhere near Hawaii. That explained to me why China Airlines Flight 008 made an immediate stop just where they were 9 hours and 16 minutes into the flight, within 3 hours and 29 minutes of reaching Los Angeles. It would have been impossible for the pilot to have landed in Hawaii because Hawaii is not even between Los Angeles and Taiwan, or between Los Angeles and the Philippines, or between Los Angeles and Tokyo, or between Los Angeles and Singapore, or between Los Angeles and Indonesia, or between anywhere in Asia and South Asia. Hawaii is way off in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, as we see it on the Gleason's Flat Earth map, image 05 illustrated below. I realized that no flights coming from or going to Japan, China, Korea, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia or the Philippines can ever make an emergency landing in Hawaii because the Earth is not a globe, and thus flights going to or coming from these countries all fly over Alaska. The evidence was clear right before my eyes that the shape of the Earth is not what I had learned during my elementary school years, middle school years, high school years, and college years, and during my Masters of Science program years. Everything I had learned in school about the shape of the Earth was a big lie. Everything started making sense to me. It shed light on a 25-year-old question I had about that flight from Rio to Sydney making a stop in Los Angeles. Having a flat Earth map in my hands, besides being able to understand the strange path of the Brazilian soccer team flying north of the equator to Los Angeles just to fly back south of the equator to Sydney, I was able to understand facts in history that seemed to be confusing to me for so long. The Gleason's map helped me to understand how the Japanese war campaign developed in the Pacific, and it also made me understand a fact little known to many people. Many Americans have never heard of the Aleutian Islands and the Japanese invasion of the islands. The Japanese invaded the Aleutian Islands on June 3, 1942. Having had control over most of Asia and Southeast Asia, Japan then moved towards North America, trying to control that straight corridor that goes from the coast of California all the way to the Philippines, as we see on the Gleason's map. It's not curved as portrayed on the globe, having Hawaii in the middle. Billy Mitchell, US General, stated in 1935 that, "I believe that in the future whoever holds Alaska will hold the world. I think it is the most important strategic place in the world." Let's take a look at another map called 1945 Air Map of the World. We can see in this map how Alaska plays a big role in the corridor and why General Mitchell said whoever holds Alaska holds the world. This map has the distances from Tokyo to Petropavlovsky in Russia, and from there to Dutch Harbor in Alaska, and from Alaska to Los Angeles. It was a very strategic corridor during World War II, and not a forgotten corner on the globe, while having Hawaii in the middle. Although the note on the right top corner claims that this is a projection of a globe on a flat surface, it's quite the other way around, since the flat Earth map is over 1,000 years old, while the first globe was introduced in 1497. Here is a close-up of both maps compared side by side. China Airlines Flight 008 emergency landing in Alaska happened in a good time in history. It was right when all this information about the flat Earth was being released. I learned later that the Taiwanese mother was doing fine, the baby gained its US citizenship, the doctor was at the right place at the right time, the pilot made the correct decision for the health of the baby, and the mother, the passengers, didn't complain and even clapped when they heard the baby crying. Let's now take a look at another emergency landing with another baby born during the flight, making the pilot land the plane where, well, let's just say that he landed the plane where it was not supposed to land if the Earth were a globe. Chapter 3. Lufthansa Flight LH543. Flight LH543 with 191 passengers aboard and a crew of 13 members departed from Bogota on July 26, 2017 towards Frankfurt, Germany. Lufthansa Flight LH543 is a daily flight from Bogota to Frankfurt which flies at approximately 520 miles per hour at 39,000 feet. The flight takes approximately 11 hours to arrive at its destination, and the distance between Bogota and Frankfurt is 5,650 miles. Among the 191 passengers, a pregnant woman originally from Bulgaria boarded the plane with no major problems. But something quite unusual for the crew of 13 happened during the flight over the Atlantic. Somewhere over the Atlantic, the woman gave birth to a baby boy being assisted by the flight attendants. As it happened to China Airlines Flight 008, LH543 just happened to have not one doctor on board, but 3. Reports say that the passengers had to move seats and the back of the plane was converted into a delivery room. As it happened to China Airlines Flight 008, the captain also decided to make an emergency landing for the well-being of the child. What doesn't make sense is the city where the plane landed. Lufthansa Flight LH543 made an emergency landing in Manchester, England. Let's take a close look at the flight path between Bogota and Frankfurt on the Globe Earth model demonstrated in image 03 below. According to the flight path in Google Maps, Lufthansa LH543 flies just north of Portugal and Spain. It flies just south of Paris, south of Brussels, and above Luxembourg before reaching Frankfurt. Even if the plane had to fly a little bit north of its flight path on the globe, a stopover in London could be somewhat acceptable. But the plane landed in Manchester, 200 miles north of London. This makes absolutely no sense at all on the Globe Earth model. Manchester is located 694 miles northwest of Frankfurt. The flight is coming from South America, just north of the equator. There is no explanation on a Globe Earth why Lufthansa LH543 was flying 700 miles northwest of its destination, 200 miles north of the city of London. When looking at the flight path on a flat Earth map, everything becomes clear, everything makes sense. I want you, the reader, to compare Lufthansa LH543 flight path on the Globe Earth model and on the flat Earth map, and see for yourself how everything makes more sense on a flat Earth map. As you see in image 04 on the previous page, Manchester is situated directly on the path of Lufthansa flight LH543. Just as it happened to China Airlines Flight 008 when the pilot was flying the aircraft directly above Alaska, the same thing happened to Lufthansa flight LH543. Manchester in England is located directly on the path of this flight that connects Bogota to Frankfurt. In order to reinforce and brainwash the population into believing in a Globe Earth model, the media keeps repeating words like flight diverted in order to make the masses believe that the Earth is a spinning sphere shooting through space. The fact of the matter is that the Earth is a plane and doesn't spin and doesn't circle around the Sun. Flight paths prove a flat, non-rotating Earth, and emergency landings seal the deal. The next flight we will be looking at does not involve any airborne babies anymore. No more doctors, baby crying, passengers clapping, and flight attendants performing the duties of nurses. However, its flight path resembles that of China Airlines Flight 008. Let's go to Hong Kong and take Cathay Pacific Flight CX884 and make an emergency landing in Alaska again. Chapter 4 Cathay Pacific Flight CX884 July 29, 2015. Cathay Pacific Flight CX884 is flying from Hong Kong to Los Angeles and everything seems to be fine, until the moment some passengers notice the flight attendants running back and forth down the aisles with uneasy looks on their faces. Cathay Pacific is a daily flight from Hong Kong to Los Angeles. According to the Flight Stats website, the flight time is 13 hours and 40 minutes. It departs Hong Kong at about 1:05 p.m. and arrives in Los Angeles at about 11:35 a.m. PDT. The aircraft type is Boeing 777-300ER. British tourist Ethan Williams grabbed his phone and started documenting everything. "I'm not sure what's happening, but there is something going on this flight," says Williams in his video uploaded to his YouTube channel. As it happened to China Airlines Flight 008, this flight is also supposed to be flying over the Pacific Ocean, but again this emergency landing takes place in the Aleutian Islands, Alaska, where the plane landed safely at Shemya Military Airport. The globe model shows us Hawaii standing in between the west coast of the US and Asia, as image 01 below from a Sea Cruise website illustrates, and as we watched on the seat back screen of a San Francisco to Tokyo flight as demonstrated in image 02 on the next page, we will compare Cathay Pacific Flight CX884 on both the globe model and the Gleason's Flat Earth map. As seen on the previous pages, this emergency landing makes more sense when we locate the cities and the flight path on the Gleason's Flat Earth map. It's a straight path flying from Hong Kong to Los Angeles, having the Aleutian Islands and Alaska right on the way of the flight. If they were really flying over the Pacific Ocean, as the globe model suggests, it would have taken hours for them to divert and reach the remote region in Alaska. As they were preparing for water ditching by asking passengers to put on their life-saving vests, the natural conclusion is that the flight had just left Russian airspace and was about to enter US airspace over the Bering Sea when the decision to land on the island was made by the captain. Image 04 above shows the supposed route of a flight going from San Francisco to Tokyo on a globe Earth. Next to it, as shown on the Gleason's Flat Earth map, is the Bering Sea separating Russian and US airspace. The red line shows the path of Cathay Pacific Flight CX-884. The facts about this emergency landing, which took place on July 29, 2015, did not end there. In July of 2018, the captain of that flight came forward and sued Cathay Pacific for injuries related to the incident. Annabelle Cochrane Lawrenson, who joined the company in 1998 and became the company's first captain in 2007, according to South China Morning Post, accused the company of negligence and breach of duty. When it was announced they were going to land in Alaska, Williams added this on his video. "That's really good news, but we still don't know why. It doesn't really matter as long as we land okay."
I will speak to you once we're on the ground at Shenyang, and we can expect 2 landings just over here. Thank you.
So that's really good news, guys. We're diverting to Shenyang and it's going to be a normal landing, not a water landing. So that's really good news, but still don't know why, but it doesn't really matter, I suppose, as long as we land okay. We're going to be landing in 10 minutes.
I hope now he understands that this landing in Alaska makes more sense when looking at the Flat Earth map. Chapter 5 Qatar Airways Flight QR725. A teenager from Saudi Arabia fell in coma aboard Qatar Airways Flight QR725, which departed from Chicago towards Doha, Qatar. The online news website Express UK reported that a teenager from Saudi Arabia on board flight QR725 had a toxic shock syndrome and hyperthermia. After the teenager fell into a coma, the captain decided to make an emergency landing. Where the plane landed is where the argument Flat Earth versus Globe Earth started. The plane landed in Moscow. Look at image 01 and 02. As we can see from these images, according to the globe model and Google Maps, this flight should start flying southeast towards the Middle East, flying directly above Portugal and Spain and over the Mediterranean Sea. It should then fly over Israel, Jordan and Saudi Arabia and finally reach Qatar. Chicago is located at 41.8781 degrees north and Doha is located at 25.2854 degrees north. The flight path on Google Maps would be correct if Earth were a globe because it shows the flight descending the parallels from 41.8781 degrees north until reaching 25.2854 degrees north, which is where Doha is located. Instead, this flight landed in Moscow, which is located at 55.7558 degrees north. In other words, on the globe model, this flight would have to fly up with its nose pointing up and then fly down. It doesn't really make any sense at all. However, When plotted on the Flat Earth map, this flight makes perfect sense as the Flat Earth map shows that Moscow is located directly between Chicago and Doha, as seen on image 01 and 02. Whether it is on the Gleason's map or on the azimuthal equidistant map, when the cities where these flights departed from and their destinations and the cities where their emergency landings took place are all located and their flight paths drawn, the reader will have no other conclusion but to realize that the Earth is not a globe. The Flat Earth map is not stamped on the UN flag for some decorative reason. The leaders of this world know that the Earth is in fact flat.